Hey everybody, today is May 6, 2017. A lot of you guys have requested an update on the Cube Computer MidTower Deluxe. So I'm going to do one, and I figured it's a good time to do one for a very special reason. So you may not realize this, but the MidTower Deluxe is officially 10 years old. That's right. The MidTower Deluxe is 10 years old. Hard to freaking believe it, to be honest with you. It all started back in May 2007. I built the Cube Computer Plexi machine back in 2006. It was a project in the Computer Engineering 1 class at Hopewell High School. And some of you guys may know that spring 2006, May 2006 was officially the start of Cube Computer Company. When I built this machine and brought it home, that was what I officially called the beginning of Cube Computer Company. The Cube Computer name actually started out with the Plexi. It was coined by my former computer engineering teacher, Michael Healy. He referred to these plexiglass computers, which here in a moment I'll pull up a picture of it. I got a bunch of old pictures in here, so I have to find it. But essentially, this is a plexiglass framed computer. Here we go. This is a plexiglass framed computer. Open air design. You essentially had two big sheets of plexiglass and two small sheets hot glued together into a frame. Motherboard usually would reside on top. CD drives and hard drive would be in the center along with the power supply. And Michael Healy, or Mr. Healy, referred to these as Cube computers. So that's where the Cube computer name has officially started. 11 years ago, actually. But anyways, it was back in April 2007. I was like, I wanted to go ahead and get me a regular computer chassis because, you know, the Plexi had some good things going for it. You know, the open air design allowed it to run very cool. The open design also had a lot of setbacks for it. Believe it or not, the way this was designed, expansion was a bit limited. I couldn't really expand it a whole lot, and also since everything was exposed, it was vulnerable to being touched, you know, and things like that. And at the time we also had pets in the house, and sometimes my cat would come in the room, you know, and things like that. One time, cat jumped off the bed and snagged the video cable holding the video card in, and actually pulled the video card loose from the machine while it was running. Did not harm it though, but yeah, just to give you an idea. So I was like, I need to get me a regular chassis computer built, and on Zoxide.com they had their own brand Ecstatic 2 MidTower chassis for $29.99. Yeah, $30 is all it cost. Now a lot of low-end computer cases were built really shoddily, very flimsy. However, this one here has been a very sturdy chassis. It's held up well over the past decade, considering all I've done to it. So, essentially, I carried over the components from the, at the time, current Plexi machine. It was a Pentium 4 base system at the time with the Asus P4B533-VM motherboard and socket 478 Pentium 4. 160 gig Western Digital SATA hard drive, which interfaced to a PCI SATA link card, along with DVD-ROM and CD burner. You know, all that good stuff. I transferred it all over to this chassis. One exception being the power supply, because the cables were not long enough, so I went online and purchased a power supply. And back in those days, I didn't know much about power supplies. I bought a Case Gears quote-unquote 580 watt power supply, which would not put out 580 watts, to be honest with you. But it powered the P4 base setup just fine for what it was. So throughout 2007, the MidTower Deluxe was a Pentium 4 based machine. using I forget. Okay, the video card it was using at first it was using onboard Intel Extreme graphics, and then I put in a GeForce FX 5200 card. You know, even in 2007, that kind of hardware was not all that great. But you know, of course, I was in high school. I didn't have much money. Most of my stuff was used or free. Bought for cheap or free. And it was almost all used. So, considering that's why I didn't spend much money on the case. And turns out, only 3 months. Well, yeah. See, actually no. Hang on. 4 months since it's September 2007. Zoxide discontinued this case, and has no longer sold it ever since. And I've seen one photo of another machine in this case online, and it was actually a black machine. This case was sold in silver and sold in black. I got some old pictures here. Actually, I may have it. Let's see if I can find it. Here we go. Here's a picture I found online years ago. This is the black Ecstatic 2 chassis, which I think looks pretty cool. Although I do tend to like silver, as the silver chassis has had the tendency to not show scratches nearly as bad. And I think somewhere online there was a thread on building a machine in this case. This particular chassis, I think there were several different versions of this chassis over time. This was the final version of it. The final version had a stamp in the back for a 120mm fan, and had the X-themed side panel, which I have it somewhere. It's probably out in the shed, I don't know. But essentially, this machine has went through many upgrades over the years. And let's see. Early 2008, I found a Celio P4X400 Dragon Ultra mainboard online for not too much. It was on eBay. As a matter of fact, okay, now I won't be able to go back and look at the purchase because eBay throws away your purchase history after a certain amount of time. But I'm just scrolling through pictures I have here. Should be able to find it. I do have a picture of the listing from, not the actual listing, but I do have a picture of the motherboard from the eBay listing. Here it is. P4X400 Dragon Ultra, new old stock motherboard from 2002. So essentially, when I first built this machine, the chip it had was a 1.7 gigahertz Pentium 4 Willamette, old P4 CPU, and I went on eBay and grabbed an Intel P4 2.4 gigahertz Northwood that I slapped on it, and I was able to overclock it to like 2.53 gigahertz. But the funny thing about that Asus board that I had in this thing, if you overclocked it above like 2.53 gigahertz or so, the onboard sound would quit working. Everything else would work, but the onboard sound would not work anymore. So I had to put in a sound card. So I wanted to find me a cheap motherboard, and as I mentioned, I was still in high school at the time, didn't have much money. I picked up this motherboard off of eBay, and this is February 2008. And I slapped that P4 Northwood on here, and I overclocked it to 2.8 gigahertz. And this motherboard also got carried over to the MidTower Deluxe Black Max for some time, and the highest I was able to overclock on it was 2.9 gigahertz. And eventually, one day, I went to do a RAM upgrade on this motherboard, and apparently the RAM I had a short in it. The module I had a short in it. But essentially, I think it was the first or second RAM module literally shorted out and burned. So that motherboard was pretty much trashed. And also, these capacitors were beginning to fail. You can see in the photo that none of the tops were bulging, but almost every single one of those capacitors are bulging up and literally leaking. And it's funny, they got worse over the time that the motherboard sat unused. The capacitor plague from the early 2000s was just something else, I tell you. New old stock parts could sit for years and years with the caps not failing, not bulging up or anything, but you go to use that part for a few months, and then let it store, put it back in storage, and then those caps would just start bulging up on their own. Anyways, somewhere in here I may have, or I should have. This is just all old random photos, to be honest with you. Start from the beginning, I think, and we'll just work our way down. This is a 2008 photo of the MidTower Deluxe. We'll come to that here shortly, what was in it then. I'm talking later 2008, by the way. Later 2008 photo. All sorts of stuff in this folder. There was a picture I essentially downloaded the store imagery from Zoxide and put "coming soon" Cube Computer MTDX Deluxe. And I think I may have posted this to MySpace, or I may have posted it to a former Angel Fire page I used to host. Which, that page is still up, but it's barely even functioning. I don't even administer it anymore. There's all sorts of random stuff in here. Here we go. Here was the original chip I had in MidTower Deluxe. Pentium 4 Williamette, 1.7 GHz, 100 MHz bus, NetBurst architecture rated frontside bus of 400 MHz. Yeah, L2 cache of 256K. Oh yeah, that was incredible. No, that was just absolutely incredible. Yeah, 0.18 micron technology. And more random stuff. This was 2007. This is an old desk I used to have. It was given to me by a friend, and you can tell it was literally warped in the center due to carrying the monitor. And of course, flat panels were still kind of new at the time. That's the MidTower Deluxe in its original form on the desk over there. Still hard to think it was 10 years ago. And we're back where we was again. Here are the very first photos I took of MidTower Deluxe. This was the first night it was running. Literally, this was the first night it was actually functioning. Times were different back in 2007. Now it was the only motherboard that was on the wall back then. In my old bedroom. This is inside the machine. I was looking at the desk. That was, I think, 2007. I initially had it on the left side of the desk, but I soon moved it over to the right side. Picture of the Plexi. Here's an overview I made of the machine. And this is the original machine as well. Old picture of the motherboard and power supply that was on the Plexi. That's the Asus board I was referring to, and it's kind of a crappy view, but there was the cooler I had on that P4 as well, all copper cooler, and it cooled it very well. To be honest with you. 2007 photo of the MidTower Deluxe. This is back when the only thing I had lighting up the inside was just 2 LED fans. That was it. This was the Plexi. I think this might have been, that was like March or April 2007. That was the original Plexi, and this is what I was talking about referring to the vulnerability of it being an open air design. These cards were just simply glued into place. There wasn't that much holding them there, so I had to do something. There's a better look at that original cooler that I had. I still had the actual heatsink somewhere. The fan's long gone. There's a video snippet of the machine. Plexi. Oh yeah, that's true. America Online does suck. That was, I would say, sometime during the summer of 2007. More than likely. Another variant of the. Okay, this was the original picture of the Plexi when I brought it home from Hopewell High School. This was when I was upgrading the Plexi from a Pentium 3 to a Pentium 4 setup. Photo of the MidTower Deluxe. I had a bunch of banners representing a lot of things about the machine at the time. This was before Cube Computer Company actually had the C Cube logo that it had. And I'm referring to the old... Let me see. I'm referring to the original C Cubed logo. Let me see if I can find it. This logo here, that one. But anyways, okay, back to my point here. I was looking for, let's see, looking for some good photos of the early 2008 machine. Here we go. This is it here. There's the cellular board in the MidTower Deluxe. Only had an 80mm fan installed in the back at the time. You have to say, this cellular board, you know, although it was dated in design and, you know, it was technologically dated, you know, outdated, it was still extremely fast. That was the fastest 478 motherboard I ever had. It used the VIA P4X400 chipset. And it was a screamer. I have to say that when you overclocked the CPU to 2.8 gig, it was a screamer. It moved. And of course, you know, Windows XP didn't really require too much to run it. I never did run Windows Vista on this platform. But let me see here. That was the fan I had on it, which I got for free from somebody nearby. And that fan was pretty loud, but it did throw a bunch of air over that heatsink, allowing it to stay good and cool. There's the power supply. And these DVD drives, those optical drives are not the same ones that are in there now. I did swap them out later on. There's the Western Digital 160 gig hard drive. There is the SATA interface card I had because, of course, that old motherboard predated SATA. Here's a TV tuner. Now, I have to say that was the most beautiful motherboard I think I've ever seen. You know, at least for that time period. It was silver. It was completely silver. And when I bought this motherboard, I also bought this Zalman heatsink, chipset heatsink off, I think, Zoxide or Newegg, and slapped that on there, and that helped keep the Northbridge nice and cool. And I did carry this over to... I still have this heatsink. It's actually on a MSI socket AM3 board I have somewhere. Probably, I think it's out in the shed. That was the original side panel fan, which did wear out eventually. There's a machine open. Okay, this was spring 2008. My buddy Tim upgraded his computer, and he had this motherboard here with this. And actually, I bought the CPU online for like 15-20 bucks. You know, back in 2008, it was an AMD Athlon 64. I think it was a trying to remember, 3200 plus single core Venice. Socket 754. Motherboard was free. CPU was 20 bucks, and I bought a heat pipe cooler for like 20 bucks, and that gave me a pretty nice little upgrade. And here is the AMD 754 versus the Intel 478. And what's hilarious here is all these people on my Cooking with Intel episode 1 say, "That's not an Intel, that's an effing AMD." No, that's not an that is not an AMD. That is an Intel 478. That is an AMD. They are actually different in size. But there's the motherboard. It's an ECS Enforce 3-A, which did give me a pretty nice little performance improvement over the Pentium 4. And I was actually able to retire that Silicon Link SATA PCI adapter because this motherboard actually had SATA on board. This was 2008 photo. And the actual machine itself, the chassis did not change much up until 2010, about late 2009, early 2010, and we'll get to that here pretty soon. Again, this is the 2008 setup, and I did swap out the power supply for a better quality one that I got out of another machine. There's MidTower Deluxe Black Max, my parents' machine. That was when I built it back in 2008. The cellular motherboard got transferred to that machine. That was the silver cellular board was the first board in the Black Max, and in that machine I had two ID hard drives using in a RAID strap using the onboard ID RAID, which made for a pretty snappy XP computer. There is the Enforce 3 chip with the heatsink removed so you can actually see it. That was when I was first installing this setup into the machine. That's the cooler. Sunbeam Silent Whisper. It wasn't so silent after I changed that fan out for a better performing fan later on, though. There's the graphics card, still using the GeForce FX 5200. These are just looking at some power supplies. There's the chip, which is a crappy picture of it. (2008). Still had the Zalman sticker on the front of it from when I had that Zalman heatsink in it on the cellular board. The one thing that really got me interested in buying this case, aside from its price, was the bubble lights on the front of it. Let's look at the back. This is 2008. And in late 2008, the machine got another upgrade. And we'll get to that here soon. There's Black Max again. That was my uncle's computer that he brought over to have something looked at on it. This is way back when. And there's that 2 GB Hitachi flash drive. Flash drive I still have. This is one way I solved the issue with PCI cards coming loose from the motherboard on the Plexi. MidTower Deluxe again. This was fall 2008. Some random motherboard. Oh, it's a motherboard I sold on Craigslist, I think. 2008. The original Plexi logo. 2007 again. This was me saving a movie in Windows Movie Maker, running the machine wide open, doing it. This is back when it was a P4 setup, back in, let's say September 07, according to that right there. This is back when I was running Bike Geek CCP on YouTube, way before I was on Cube Computer channel. I have all sorts of random stuff in here. This was a screenshot of the desktop back in 2008. Back when it was running XP, but with I think Vista Transformation Pack make it look like Windows Vista, and it did a pretty good job. I mean, it wasn't exactly like Windows Vista, but it did. It was a nice refresh. It gave a nice refresh of going from the original Windows XP look. Yeah, January 20, 2008. This is back when the machine was running the cellular board. Now it's at stock frequency. This is when I started overclocking a little bit. Had it at 2.53. I eventually did take it all the way up to like 2.8 or so. That was... not sure what... I think I want to say that was... crap. It was sometime in 2008. It's probably January. Can't remember. Yeah. I think it was January. I think it was still on the ASUS board back then. Oh, this is me demonstrating the VI start menu. Yeah, the lock screen, which looked very similar to Vista. That was the boot up screen for the transformation pack. Some random photos from an old 2010 video where I compared Windows XP to Windows Vista and 7 File Explorer and things like that. Just random logos I had saved. Comparison of start menus, of course. Oh, come on. This was, I don't know what the date on this was. I had to look in details and find out. Had up to 2.57 gig. Okay, we're going to move on just a little bit. Okay, this was the December 2008 upgrade to the machine. Went from the Athlon 64 3200 plus single core to a 4200 plus dual core. This was the Guild RAM I bought, and DDR2 was dirt cheap back then. I think I only paid like $18 a stick for this stuff. It was cheap back then. Yeah, 2 gigabyte sticks. Only paid like I think 18 or 25, either between 18 to $25 a stick for this stuff. I eventually sold this RAM in a client's hardware upgrade back in I think 2012 or so. I can't remember. This power supply, not a really good quality one, but it did do the job just fine. Video card was an ATI Radeon HD 3400 graphics card. No, it's 3450 is what it was. 256 megs of DDR2 memory. Now, of course, I didn't do hardcore gaming or anything, but it was plenty for my needs. Motherboard was the ECS Enforce 9M-A. Again, I was not, I was, let's see, it was December 2008. I was still in high school back then. I was, I didn't have all that much money at the time, so I had to be on a budget with upgrades. But this was the most significant because it was finally buying new stuff for the machine. That motherboard there was also a piece of crap, to be honest with you. It wasn't all that great, I have to say, but it wasn't a board for overclocking, I have to say that, but it did give you some pretty nice things. There's a processor. Socket AM2. Here's me. There's after I stripped all the old stuff out of the machine except for the hard disk. Sand cooler. That's the nice thing about AMD is for so many years, the same, as they have changed sockets, for most part you could still use an old cooler with a new system, provided it was able to handle the heat output of the chip. So essentially, after this hardware upgrade, I had to upgrade the machine to Windows Vista. I did run XP on this for about a month, but of course, since it was 32-bit, it couldn't see all 4 gigs of memory, so I did. It was early 2009. I made the plunge for Windows Vista. There's me installing all the hardware. And of course, cable management was not really much of a concern back then to me. But let's see. That was the machine up and running for the first time. Picture of me. So I'll go ahead and look at, see what else we have. Just going through old photos. Here are some photos of MidTower Deluxe from August of 2009. I was running Windows Vista on at the time, and actually back then I had, it was a theme you can install and make it look like Windows 7. And it was, I think, January of 2010 that I actually upgraded to Windows 7. There's a machine. Had a lava lamp on top that actually was, it matched the color perfectly because I had a green side panel fan. That was one of the really nice looking times with the MidTower Deluxe. There's my road bike, old one. There it is again. That was a good picture there. In addition, 2009 was the year that I started doing computer repairs in my bedroom. In years past, I had used the spare bedroom, but my parents were not always real fond of that. And eventually, in 2009, I got booted from the spare bedroom because relatives came up and stayed with us, and so I had to get all the computer stuff out. I had to get all the computer repair stuff out of that bedroom and into my bedroom. So I brought a table in, and that's essentially what started the foundation of what has been, what has been there for 7 years. 2009 through 2016 till I moved over here, and finally, after 7 years, the computer repair shop and the bedroom finally split up again, which I was so glad. I guess I had somebody's machine for service at the time. I can't remember for sure. There's MidTower Deluxe. And of course, Cube Computer channel actually started in late 2009, but if you was to go look at my oldest videos, a lot of those videos were actually carryover from Byte Geek CCP. So you'll find older videos of MidTower Deluxe all the way back from 2007. I must have just turned a lava lamp on all the time because it was looking really odd there. And of course, when you don't have enough stickers, you make your own stickers. AMD inside, Intel sucks. AMD Athlon X2, 64, Windows Vista, Windows 7 ready, blah blah blah, yeah. Right back again. See what else I have. This is from, at least, late 2009. A little off subject, but this is a Black Max at the time. Had a had a little section of closed dryer vent ducting going from the side panel fan straight to the cooler to duct in fresh air to the CPU core because I had a pretty hard overclock on the machine back then. And looking at some antifreeze because I did a winter overclock with some random hardware on the back porch. This was let me see. Not sure which motherboard that was. I think it might have been that ECS board from that had there was a socket 754. Yeah, that's exactly what it was. On the back porch, and I had conventional automotive antifreeze in it because it was well below freezing outside. This is what you call a redneck water cooling system, by the way, guys. Old heater core that I had. This one fan because that's all you really needed at those temperatures. The pump inside there was the kind that you see in like decorative fountains and stuff, runs on 120 volts, and I made my own special reservoir, put it in the submersible pump in there, run tubing to this, run tubing to that. Had an old, it wasn't a great water block, but that was it. It was temporary, but that was kind of an interesting setup I had there. That was a kind of a crappy photo, but that was the core temp, 20 degrees C at least. I don't know what the outdoor temperature was at the time I'd done the video, but yeah, I think that was under a pretty hard overclock as well. No, actually, no, that was stock. I don't know. It's been so long I don't really remember. Like the hard disk temperature was 19 degrees C or 66 degrees Fahrenheit. Yeah, and I put a bigger fan on the on that heater core. Yeah, that was an interesting setup I had there. Here we go. This was February 2010. That was when I officially went to dual displays, and also the machine had Windows 7 on it at the time. MidTower Deluxe hardware had one thing did change. I did put it. I at the time I had bought one of those cherry red power supplies, which is actually one of those is actually running in the tech room computer. So yeah, that was when officially I had gotten dual displays, and I think it was snowing outside according to that graphic there. It was snowing outside. Yep, it was snowing. It's a hilarious picture of my dog Luke at the time. My parents' dog Luke. Evil Eyes. Here's a photo of the machine from March 2010. Now later that year was when things began to change with the machine, big time, with the case, including the side panel. And one thing I had actually already done to the machine. On the side, I had made a nice big air vent. Cut a big hole in the side with a Dremel, and then hot glued in some window screen. And there's a hole right here for an external SATA hookup, which I don't use anymore because I have the tech room machine, but I still have it in there. That helps draw air into the machine a lot better to cool the hard drives. Because I had big upgrades planned at the time. Because roughly around this time, I can't remember exactly when I had it done, I swapped out the old Western Digital hard drive for two Seagate 500 gig drives and a RAID Stripe config, which, you know, was extremely fast. But Seagate hard drives at the time were absolutely horrible in regards to reliability. Both of those drives failed within the warranty period. One of them failed within 3 months of purchase. However, Lucky Smart actually detected failure before they actually failed, so I had plenty of time. Which I think, yeah, even back then I do believe, it was sometime in 2010 I picked up a 1TB Western Digital green power drive to start doing backups with. Because like I mentioned in a recent video, it's very important that you back up your files if you care about them. That's why I still have files from 2007 on here. So here it is, June 2010, and here's where I do a major upgrade to the case. We now have the big open side panel with a humongous window and a 120mm fan to draw in air toward the motherboard and add-on cards. And in addition, the temperature readout display and the two USB 2 ports and a FireWire port. Now, the temperature display does not function properly. The thermistor for the processor failed, so I put in a different one, and it turns out this thermistor it's not the same value, so you essentially take this temperature and divide it by 2. And I still don't know if that's reading accurately or not. It's supposed to be the water block temperature since I converted this over to water cooling. The sensor is mounted over on the water block, but it's not accurate. Now the hard disk readout might be still be pretty accurate. I don't know for sure though. But this is how it looked when I first had the modification done. What it was in the computer engineering room at Hopewell, they had some older chassis. I think that's where I got the chassis from. Yeah, it was from Hopewell. and it was actually a beige. It was a beige chassis. And this side panel was just a solid, sheet. And I actually took a Dremel and cut a big hole in it, and went to Lowe's and picked up some plexiglass. And after about 3 or 4 different tries, I finally managed to cut a circular hole to mount the fan on. And you can see there's still a couple little cracks right around where the screws go in. But yeah, that was tough. That was extremely difficult. But I did actually manage to do it. The reason why it was so difficult is I didn't have a hole saw that was the right dimension to cut the hole for the fan. Here's some additional photos of the MidTower Deluxe, and also in 2010, I don't know if I even covered this in the last photo, but in early 2010, I upgraded the machine to a Phenom 2 quad. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention in 2009. Yeah, I've done some upgrades to this thing I had forgot. In 2009, I installed a Phenom 2 quad-core 905E processor now because that ECS board was compatible with it, which did give me a pretty nice little boost in performance. But I wanted more, so I ended up getting this particular motherboard here. Somewhere I have photos of it. I don't know where they're at. I want to say the upgrade was done in March 2010. Sometime around there. So I have no idea where the photos are actually at. Okay, the upgrade was actually done in late October, early November 2010. I went from, of course, the ECS main board to a to this MSI motherboard. Can't remember the exact model. Yeah, it's funny. They called it military class. Yeah, bull crap. That thing was a piece of garbage. Very unstable, and it had a 4+1 phase CPU VRM, which was just barely adequate for a 125 watt CPU. That was the old motherboard and setup. Pulled the old motherboard out. At the time, I had an Eco Element 650 watt power supply. Yeah, that power supply. It was okay. That power supply did fail kind of violently though. The 5-volt standby regulator IC went pow, and it never turned on again. So off to ATD Computers, I went to go pick up a power supply because I needed it like the same day, and that's how I got the current Thermaltake power supplies in there now. That power supply there failed. I think it was 2013, sometime like that. Can't remember for sure. And there's the hard drive setup I had. At the time it was 2 500 gig Seagates and that Western Digital backup drive. There's the old board. AMD Phenom 2 965. The hottest running CPU I've ever had. Well, that one there is a pretty close competitor, but this one here seems to just put out more heat considering the performance improvement the FX 8120 has over this. I had 4 gigs of RAM at the time. I did upgrade it to 12, and then sometime back when I took the two gig sticks and swapped those out for 4 gigs, and I actually know what happened was I bought a 16 gig kit and installed it in there. This was with the current motherboard it has now. Went to 16 gigs, and some of this RAM went to the Black Max, and the other went to storage. I still have it somewhere. There's the base of the heat pipe cooler, which that heat pipe cooler got really tested hard with that Phenom 2 965. Just to give you an idea of what this cooler here can do, it can passive cool a Phenom 2 905E, which is a 65 watt chip. Under 100% load, the CPU will get up to about 58 to 60 degrees Celsius, but it will not get any hotter than that. I literally was able to passive cool it with this just for testing. I actually, normally I had the fan going on the heatsink, but just for testing, I was able to passive cool the processor with this big thing. Not with the 965 though. That was the hottest running chip I've ever had. And there's where the Zalman heatsink is now. It's on that motherboard still, actually. Yeah, look here. Military class. Yeah, bull crap. That motherboard was not all that great. I did swap that board out in 2012. And of course, Cable Manager I did not give a crap about back then either. But then again, I had, even now I have a whole lot more stuff in the machine than I did back then. I still had the Radeon HD 3450 graphics card. There it is. I'm all closed up. Love the irony. The Dell, it's funny, a Dell expansion slot, which I think I still have a Dell expansion slot in the back of this machine. That was back when Dell actually stamped the logo on their expansion slots. I think this is pulled from a late 2000 or late 90s or early 2000s machine. That expansion slot I'm talking about. There it is running. That was when I put the I think that was when I put the Zalman heatsink on there. That was a really close-up macro of the chipset. That was the North Bridge. That's the South Bridge. I pulled both heatsinks off and got rid of the bubblegum looking stuff and put on actual thermal compound. Because even the chipset on this board ran pretty warm. There it is. Yeah, military class. Nah, I don't think so. I still have that board, but that's been the most unstable board I've ever had. Anyways, we're just cycling through photos again, I think. Yep. Okay, so that upgrade was done in late 2010. Let's move on to 2011. So here we are in year 2011. That was the year that the well, actually no, it was late 2010 that the MidTower Deluxe went water cooled, because the that Phenom 2 it ran so hot that the first thing I did was, for Christmas I got a Corsair H50 all-in-one cooler, pre-filled cooler that you just install. And in March of 2011 was the time that I found a part system at the Computer store that had the components have a water cooling system in it. So I was able to do a custom loop on that machine. This was the H50, which is kind of glared out due to the window. Had a pretty massive fan in there. And what was interesting is I had to it was tricky getting this thing mounted because the radiator would have hit the power supply. So what I did was I took an old crappy 120mm fan and essentially gutted it for its frame, hot glued this into place, and actually bolted the fan framing into the back of the chassis. I think I hot glued it. I can't remember for sure exactly how I did it, but it was something like that. And I installed a pusher fan on the back, which was very loud, so I used Smart Fan to kind of control it a little bit. So I wanted something a little bit different. This was my first iteration of the custom water cooling loop. That lasted only about a few days because it just didn't perform all that well. I didn't have all that much radiator available because, well, that radiator just didn't have all that much surface area on it. But it did look nice, I have to say that. And here is where, well, sooner or later is when I actually put the big radiator on top. That was the first water block that I had. It was okay. It wasn't all that great though. You have to say, having the reservoir and pump inside the chassis, it was tight. It was very tight. So tight that I had to mount the side panel fan on the outside, just to make enough room to fit everything in there. There is a radiator that I have on it now. This was formerly an automotive AC evaporator. I think it was more like the old stock because it found it in my grandpa's shed, and it still had like a plastic cap over the ends, so apparently it had never been installed. And let me say, that thing has a lot more surface area for cooling, and it does a pretty good job. And my dad actually brazed on some barbs so I could actually attach tubing, and off the Lowe's I went for tubing. I actually have to go to another folder to get the more up-to-date photos. Okay, so here's when I upgraded the MidTower Deluxe to the newer radiator. At first I started out with 4 push fans, 80mm fans. I had a picture of Mad Jack. Anyways, there is where I had everything plumbed up. There it was right after I had first filled it up. I don't know if I'll be able to see it or not in this photo, but I did actually have an issue with a small leak on one of the brazings. I was able to actually patch it with RTV, and it never has leaked since. But anyways, which the coolant I have in there is Fluid XP Plus. It's a non-conductive coolant that is actually it's also safe. You know, if let's say if your dog or cat happens, if it does happen to leak out and get on the floor or whatever, your dog or cat sips it up, it will not hurt them because it's actually food safe rated. I mean, it is actually rated food safe almost. I mean, literally, that's how they rated it. That coolant is quite old too. I have not changed it, but I mean, it's still working just fine. I think some of the actual water has evaporated because I have actually topped it off once or twice with distilled. But that's, you know, over a long period of time. And there for a while I had, let's say, at first I had these 4 fans pushing, and then I added 4 9.2s onto the other side that were pulling, and the setup was just very noisy. So eventually I did away with the pusher fans because those are the noisiest fans of them all. And of course, this is how it sounds now. Not very loud. That was somebody's computer I was working on. Again, that's looking back at the cooler. Okay, so that wraps up for 2011. Let's go look at 2012. And sometime in 2012, I think it was 2012, I upgraded the hard drive setup to 2 1TB drives for a RAID stripe and a 2TB backup. And of course, with Seagate, every single one of them smart failed within their. Actually, no, 2 of them smart failed within warranty. The 2 1TB did, and eventually the 2 2TB backup drive failed outside of warranty. But by that point, I was getting ready to upgrade anyway. So that was actually what made me push the plunge to upgrade to my current drive setup, which is 2 2TB drives and a RAID stripe and a 4TB weekly backup drive. Now, 2012 was another big time for this machine. I can find the actual photos. This was when I went to the current setup, at least in regards to the motherboard and the video card. Yeah, guys, the current setup on the MidTower Deluxe has been in the MidTower Deluxe for the longest period of time out of any other setup, you know, that has been in there. For 5 years, I have had this current setup, and it is showing its age. And I'll come back to that here soon. But here's the graphics card, an XFX Radeon HD card. There is the this here is the water block that I currently have. Heat Cure 3.0 LC. Seems to do a whole lot better than the last water block I had. You can obviously see why by the design inside of it. So yeah, for 5 years I have been running that same water cooling setup as well. In almost constant runtime as well, as the machine never shuts off. There's the current board, AceRock 890FX Deluxe 4. This motherboard has been a pretty decent board for overclocking, and I would say this board has been a good value. It's not a UEFI board though. That's the one complaint I have about it. But the reason why I picked an AMD 800 series, 890 series chipset for this was MidTower Deluxe has a floppy drive, and even back then I still occasionally had to use a floppy drive. So I actually found a setup where it would be nearly a drop-in install, essentially. Well, I went to do a whole bunch of other mods to the machine, but anyways, the next upgrade will not have a floppy drive, of course, because motherboards have long phased-out support for them. So getting rid of that floppy drive insert on the front bezel is going to be a little tricky, I have to say, because it's not removable. It's molded into the plastic. So that's the motherboard again. It's a socket AM3 board, but this board with the BIOS update supported the AM3 Plus Zambezi processor. 8120 I think was the highest one it would support. It may have supported the 8150, I don't know for sure. Now the Vishera was definitely a better chip than the Zambezi, but definitely not like the Ryzen. And there's me getting ready to install everything. There's the motherboard installed. Arctic Silver 5. Mounted the water block. That was kind of I'm trying to remember. Oh yeah, I think I mounted it before I actually plumbed up the new lines and everything. Yeah, draining everything out was kind of a challenge, but there it is installed. And of course everything's a mess. And of course, the graphics card is a Radeon HD 6700 series, and of course, cables were an absolute mess with that power supply because it was not modular. And having to run cables through here to power the water pump and the fans did make a pretty big mess as well. But that was the original. That was how this thing originally looked. And these USB 3 ports eventually got moved up to the front. Right there they are. I did eventually rip out the USB 2 ports. I cut them out of there in the original audio jacks and replaced them with port sensing audio jacks and USB 3.0 ports on the front. That was done, I think, in 2014 or 2015. Sometime around there. Can't remember for sure, to be honest with you. It might have been done in 2016. I can't remember. But there it is. There were the roughly the idle temps with that with that particular setup, and it had a very mild overclock on it then. I did have this thing overclocked to 4.2 gigahertz there for a while, but eventually it started losing instability about a year ago, so I downed it. I returned it to stock. I might try it again later on, see what I can get out of it. But of course, as I mentioned, it's showing its age. Looking more into upgrading the platform more than anything. Yeah, look at those idle temps. And of course, that's a 125 watt CPU as well. Some photos I took. Yeah, a photo of the road bike I was working on it. So the years after 2012 were not quite as eventful as previous years. As I mentioned, I hadn't really done all that much with upgrading the machine. But here are some other photos I have of it. That was actually before I took those 4 fans off of it and had the other 4 remain in place. That was after the previous power supply had failed. and I was able to make things a little bit more tidy with that one because it's actually modular. Hard to believe this thing is. I've had this chassis for 10 years. It really is hard to believe it's been 10 years. I was, let's see, I was a sophomore in high school when I bought this case. And I graduated in 2009. And it's like, wow, looking back all of these years. This is back when I had the Seat Infinite TV cable card, tuner card in the machine. For those of you who don't know, that's a Windows Media Center. For Windows Media Center to watch and record protected cable TV, digital cables. That way you could bypass the cable company DVR fees and set-top box fees with just running a cable card. Caution, keep away from children. This is not a toy. This product should not be used by or near children. Read instructions for proper use. It's still on there. And security device enclosed. So yeah. So here's an overexposed photo of the light coming out of the machine. I did an overexposure just to make it look cool. So from year 2012 onward, upgrades to MidTower Deluxe were nowhere near as substantial as they were from years 2007 through 2012. Once in a while here and now I do hard drive upgrades, and sometime back when the only major upgrade this got, which pretty significant upgrade, was including a solid state drive in the machine as the boot drive. That happened, I want to say 2013 or 2014. Can't remember exactly when. But got a solid state drive. Not the fastest SSD out there either, but it is a solid state drive. When I upgrade this machine next, I might be replacing that as well. Might be including an M.2 SSD. I don't know. It really depends. But I did the hard drive upgrades at a RAM upgrade. RAM upgrade happened right around the time I upgraded the MidTower Deluxe Black Max to its current AMD A-Series APU setup. So anyways, the current specs on the machine are this. It has the ASRock 890FX Deluxe 4 motherboard with an AMD Radeon HD 6700 graphics card, AMD FX 8120 processor, 8-core processor running at stock 3.1 gig. It has 16 gigs of G-Skill Ripjaws X RAM. I still have a composite TV capture card in there for capturing composite stream from a VCR. I still have a fax modem in there actually, because I do send faxes once in a while. For storage, I have 4 terabytes in a RAID drive, which is 2 terabyte drives in a RAID drive config. For backing that up, I have one 4 terabyte single drive, which is funny to know has been failing smart since August of last year, but the drive continues to function perfectly fine, so I have not swapped it. But and actually, I do have a brand new replacement on the desk over there inside of a bubble mailer. I have not opened it yet. It was a free warranty replacement, and they did not want the existing drive back, so I just left it in there. And I also have a 2 terabyte single drive for storing extra TV recordings that are actually played back on. See, I'm sure some of you guys may remember the other TV box I had in my bedroom at the old place. That TV box is actually in the bedroom over here, and I watch recorded TV on it. I currently do not have cable right now. I have internet because that's all I really need. But since Spectrum bought out Time Warner Cable and since Charter bought out Time Warner Cable and changed over to Spectrum, if I change my plan, I'm going to lose my 200 meg internet. I'm going to go back down to 100 meg or spend $40 more to go up to 300 megs. Yeah, Charter, that's moving things in the right direction, isn't it? But Anyways, I still have EID optical drives up there as a DVD burner and a DVD-ROM drive. The DVD-ROM drive have been running since, I don't know, 2009. Came out of an E-Machines. Now the DVD writer actually came out of an HP machine, but I was able to swap the E-Machines faceplate over because it was the same branded drive. I think it was LG or Samsung, one of those brands. Able to swap that over. Still have the floppy disk drive in there, and still been using the same card reader I've been using since I think 2010 or 2011. And it's seen a lot of use considering how many times I put SD cards in it all the time. But still running the same reservoir and water pump has been on there since 2010, and that was used, by the way, when I got it. And it's been running nearly non-stop around the clock. And of course, here's then machine's about due for a clean out. I cleaned it out right before I moved over here. There's the other fans. There's the front of it. So you might be wondering, what are my plans for this machine in regards to upgrades? You know, with the new AMD Ryzen that's out now, pretty compelling reason to upgrade, you know, considering what's out there now. I'm hoping maybe later this year. Depends on my budget, how much I can spend. But I would definitely love to overhaul this machine with the new AMD Ryzen 7 processor to bring this thing back up to par, because like I mentioned, it's, you know, the current platform is essentially, it's over 5 years old. It's showing its age, but it still offers plenty of punch for what I need it for. It's primarily video editing, and you know, just I don't do too much of anything major with it. The most significant thing I do with it is video editing for YouTube and stuff. But yeah, guys, I know this is getting to be a pretty long video now, but hard to believe it, but the MidTower Deluxe is 10 years old. The case, anyway, is 10 years old. So, I don't plan on replacing this chassis anytime soon. It has a lot of sentimental value to me. Had it for 10 years. And I have modified it to such a major extent that I don't want to replace it with something else. Otherwise, I won't be able to call it the MidTower Deluxe anymore. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching. Hey everybody, I sure hope you guys enjoyed this video from Cube Computer Channel. Remember to like the video, subscribe to Cube Computer Channel for more updates, and remember to tick the bell so that you actually get notified of these updates. Did you know that I am also on a second channel? That's Cube Computer MTDX. Over here you'll find videos of bicycling, weather, elevators, and all sorts of other neat and interesting stuff. Feel free to subscribe to that channel as well. And again, I thank you for your support, and thanks for watching this video.